Elden Ring is the quintessential open world game. Need I say more? I was initially working on a video that pretty much spent an hour going over every single issue that I have with open world games, and kinda how Breath of the Wild perfected that genre, and ever since then devs have either tried to mimic what they can't or have tried to make the formula better in their eyes. All to say in the end that over the last nearly 5 years since Breath of the Wild released, the games industry has kind of failed miserably time and time again at just making an open world game that doesn't feel either overbearing or underwhelming. And I was really close to finishing that video. Then, like I least expected, E3 happened, and there were a few games that used the phrase open world as a marketing point, and I was just disgusted, because at this point, people have been trying everything they can to make a profit off of this genre, to the point where it doesn't feel like anyone has added anything to the genre, only continuing to suck the life out of the genre and using it as a selling point furthers that nobody wants an open world for the sake of storytelling. They just want an open world to look at or to really just use so they can turn a profit. And then Elden Ring was announced to be an open world Souls game. And here's the thing, okay? I've played Bloodborne, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, and Sekiro. Yeah, I skipped out on Dark Souls 2. And I genuinely thought that Souls games didn't really need to become open world. You see, the way the linear games had been to this point was fine. Sure, I was already hellishly confused on where to go in the games regardless of their linear paths, but I thought the games worked just fine. Well, then Elden Ring actually fucking happened. And I bought it. And within the first hour to hour and a half of playing, I got absolutely lost by the insanity of From Software to have taken the genre of open world, clashed it with the Souls genre, and actually managed to pull off one of the best games I have played in years. Not to mention the best open world I have played in years. Honestly, it blows Breath of the Wild out of the water by a long shot. Sure, the engine it runs off is decently old as far as I can tell, and has a few issues trying to run the game. Oh my god, I could not handle fighting the first fucking tree sentinel because I swear, that boss is right in the middle of a load zone. Like, that is the only explanation as to why that specific fight is such bullshit for, just performance. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. Anyways, despite the many issues that this game has because of it being an open world and From Software no longer being able to fully rely on skyboxes, this game has so much life and so much love put into every single inch of its world. But not to the point of being too much. You see, in games like Cyberpunk 2077 or Grand Theft Auto 5, the most I could give the game for feeling alive was the fact that the streets were populated well with people and cars. Something, Grand Theft Auto does a lot better than Cyberpunk. And, a lot of people still give Cyberpunk 2077 a lot of shit now, but I will say in the very beginning, I was actually very surprised with how well populated it was in certain areas. But the problem is, even with areas being populated with people, the content of the game felt a little underwhelming, okay? There are still things that are being found even today. Like, there are things in that world that people are finding today and being like, whoa, that's surprising. I didn't know that's been there. But regardless, the game feels like at this point it's kind of solved and everybody's been like, okay, whatever, we get it. We know the endings, we know the story, we know the world. It's nothing new, okay? Like, genuinely, Cyberpunk 2077 added nothing to the open world genre. The only thing it added was it's a cyberpunk world. I don't know. I mean, there's probably a bunch of other games just like that. Anyways, back to Elden Ring. Running from the start of the game to like 30 minutes out, I ran into 3 bosses, several enemies, an enemy on horseback that kind of fucked me up, items on dead bodies, enemies in camps or sitting at bonfires, those god-awful fucking dogs, giant crabs, giant crawfish, I think, maybe that's a lobster, a fucking dragon, and a few NPC invaders that really pissed me off. And my favorite thing about Souls games is that you have a path that you take to a boss, all right? You're on a set path. You rest at a bonfire, you go to another bonfire, you go to a boss, that's it. The main goal of the story for you is to progress through these bosses, all right? And what you gotta do is get through some basic enemies, level up a bit, and then take on the boss. Get fucked up a couple of times, level up some more, maybe, and then come back and see how much better you are, and then get fucked again, only to realize, okay, maybe it's not a level problem, maybe I'm just shit at the game. But in Elden Ring, you can skip all the enemies, make your way to the main boss, get your ass handed to you, cry about it on Twitter saying that the game needs an easy mode, or if you're a Western game dev, you cry that the user experience sucks and that Japanese games suck too.
They suck. I'm sorry, like, you guys need to get with the times and make better interfaces and like update your technology. We're totally kicking your ass. Back then, you guys were the king of the world, but your time has passed.
Oh yeah, that's Phil Fish, creator of the hit game Fez that nobody remembers anymore, and I don't blame you. Jokes about the game devs crying aside, you'll get your ass handed to you and finally decide, okay, maybe I need to level up and come back to this boss. So you know, you go and find a church, find a weird teleporter, run past a giant gargoyle, and then backstab a couple of these little guys and level up 30 times. And then absolutely obliterate the bad guy. Or you can just run around and kill some of the many mini bosses that the game has to offer. And I mean many. Within the first section of the map alone, and I'm sorry, there's gonna be a little bit of spoilers. Within the first section of the map alone, I believe there are at least 30 mini bosses, or at least 30 bosses, including the main bosses. And I love that. And that is one of the many reasons why this game is the peak of open world games, okay? Oh, not to mention, you don't even have to do some of the required story bosses in order to beat the game. You could genuinely beat 4 or 5 bosses and beat the game within under an hour, even if you're under leveled. All right, and that's not a joke. There is a speedrun of the game to prove this. Mind you, this is something you can do in pretty much every single Dark Souls game, especially Dark Souls 3, but the fact still stands. And look, you can do this in Breath of the Wild as well, if you're fucking mad, okay? Like if you are crazy, you can just skip all the bosses and the enemies and you can just go straight for Ganon, all right? Full naked, maybe a couple of swords, you can just rush to Ganon right off the bat, and yeah, I don't know why anyone would do that. Here in Elden Ring, you just start the game, you die, come back, and start making your way towards endgame, all with nothing but a sword you started with and a horse some random girl gave you, and now you're married to. I don't know. There are so many places you can grind levels, grind items, find bosses, find story, find armor, find weapons, and all the while, the game doesn't mark every single fucking thing that you have ever found on the map. And I'm looking at you, Far Cry and Horizon, all right? The most that you will see on your map are your sites of grace, and also your lost runes, and maybe some locations. And that leads me into a point that I want to talk about. Getting absolutely shredded by some enemies and feel like you're not fit for the area yet? Start running away from the enemies to a site of grace, and they all vanish. If they aren't like 5 feet away from you, that is. But also, if you want to fast travel somewhere, you don't have to go scrolling through a list of places. You can just open up your map, whether you're at a site of grace or not, and just look for the place that you want on the map, and boom, you're there. Maybe after a load screen, but you're there. And you know what? That's something that they vastly improved on from all of the other Souls games. But it makes a lot of sense because of the fact that this is an open world game now. But I will admit, at times, the map is a little dog shit. Like, it's not the worst, but it's definitely hard to look at sometimes. I'm definitely getting sidetracked from reasons why this game is an amazing open world game, but really, there's not much else to say other than that, all right? It just is. It has so much to offer without being overbearing or underwhelming, like I said. There's not too much in the world to give me anxiety, and there's not so little that I feel like it's barren and empty all the time, like I definitely did with Breath of the Wild and most open world games thereafter. Elden Ring is a game that actually managed to expand on the formula that was created in Breath of the Wild, and it's absolutely perfected what many already thought to be perfect and now dead. Elden Ring, in my eyes, has pretty much revived gaming for me. I currently have 86 hours in the game, and I've only beat 18 bosses so far, not including the many mini bosses. I'm taking my time with the game and enjoying every step of the way. When I started playing the game, I just wanted to explore the big open world and not really care if I wasn't supposed to be in a certain place, except for when I waltzed into Caelid.
What the hell is even that?
Game is good, 10 out of 10. I'm really glad it's actually real. This game will be the one that everyone will be talking about for years to come. I hope that doesn't age poorly. And I hope they make DLC for it as well, just to keep it alive a little bit longer.